Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up after a couple of weeks on hiatus. There's really just nothing going on. Now we have NFL free agency in full swing. Green Bay Packers making a couple of trades. Wanted to hop on. I'm pulling up Twitter just in the chance that while I'm recording this, the Packers do make a move. But wanted to hop on, talk about a couple of moves that the Packers have made, primarily the Rashan Gary trade, because I think general manager Brian Gutekunst just at his best when it came to that trade that was completed earlier with the Dallas Cowboys. You have to keep in mind, and I'm probably going to split this up into two videos, because I do want to talk about Sean Rhyan and his 3-year deal, and the Packers via Adam Schefter. Again, depending on when you watch this, the Packers earlier on Monday parting ways officially with Elgton Jenkins, which was expected all offseason. Elgton Jenkins will be a cap casualty for Green Bay. And this felt like the direction the Packers were going to go. And once they restructured Aaron Banks' contract and then signed Sean Rhyan to a 3-year deal, the writing's on the wall that Elgton Jenkins was going to be gone. So I'm going to split this up into two videos. So it's probably going to be two shorter videos, because I think I do just want to split it up. So the Packers trade Rashan Gary to the Dallas Cowboys. So they get on the phone with Jerry Jones, or Jerry Jones gets on the phone with Goody and company, and they, for the second offseason in a row, are able to orchestrate a trade that deals with draft compensation going one way and an edge rusher going the other. Now, remember last year when Micah Parsons landed at Green Bay, it was 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. So now we'll see. It's going to be a little weird, but Kenny Clark and Rashan Gary both playing on the same defensive front in Dallas. Where I think Goody deserves a ton of credit here is, I mean, we can't act like last Friday didn't happen when Rashan Gary put on Instagram a farewell note with a graphic, a farewell message to Green Bay, to the Packers, and to the community, and then deleted it and said he was hacked. Like, let's call a spade a spade. I'm not going to act like I'm in the know on all of this, and none of us really should unless we are in the know. Rashan Gary wasn't hacked. Not how that typically works. Why would someone hack Rashan Gary and tweet a farewell message to Green Bay? If you're going to hack someone, it's going to be something far more harmful or devious than a farewell message to the Packers. And so I don't know what exactly happened there. Was Rashan Gary told he was going to be released and sent out that message on Instagram? Was he frustrated with what was happening and tried forcing Green Bay's hand by putting out a farewell message? One of those options, far more likely than the one we were told, which is Rashan Gary, was his Instagram account was hacked, but then he quickly got control back of it, right? Again, typically not how that works when someone's account gets hacked, whether it's on X, Instagram, or wherever. And so that happened last Friday, and then this trade goes down with Dallas just a few days later, and it gets Green Bay a 2027 fourth-round pick. Not this year's draft, but next year's draft, Green Bay gets a fourth-round pick. And for me, Goody deserves a ton of credit, because if you remember at his end-of-season presser in February, which came a few weeks after the loss to Chicago in the wild card round, Goody was asked a couple of times about Rashan Gary, and he was pretty blunt about it. One of the quotes I pulled, and this is directly from Goody, and I quote, talking about Rashan Gary, "I thought he started out really, really strong. He obviously had a lot of production early. I think he ended up with 60-some pressures and 7.5 sacks. That's pretty good production in the National Football League. I did think towards the end of the year he wasn't as productive as he was in the beginning." He wasn't. Rashan Gary went the final 10 games of the season without a sack or a tackle for loss. Think about that. Last 10 games of the season, your former first-round pick, who you are relying on heavily with Micah Parsons in the lineup, and especially without Micah Parsons once he tore his ACL in Denver, and in the last 10 games of the season, Rashan Gary did not register a single sack or a single tackle for loss. And he fell out of favor so far that it was either the last 3 games or the last 4 games he was getting outsnapped by both Kingsley Enagbare, who signed with the Jets once free agency opened up earlier on Monday, and he was getting outsnapped by Lucas Van Ness. Green Bay could not, under any circumstance, bring back Rashan Gary, given the production or a lack thereof that he displayed, especially in the final 10 weeks of the season, given his cap number of, $18 million? There is no world, there is no planet, given what Green Bay is paying Micah Parsons, given what Green Bay is paying Jordan Love, given that they'd probably like to work out some extensions with names like Christian Watson and Tucker Kraft, and they just signed Sean Ryan to a 3-year deal, there was no world that existed where Rashan Gary could be brought back on his current contract. There was a world that existed where Green Bay restructures it and maybe they find a compromise and some common ground and Gary is back. But as this thing dragged on throughout the offseason, almost just like Elton Jenkins, it became more and more obvious that Rashan Gary's probably playing somewhere else in 2026 and beyond. And then he sends that farewell message on Instagram on Friday and quickly deletes it. And it's even more of a foregone conclusion that, all right, Rashan Gary's probably not going to be a Green Bay Packer. We have seen him in the green and gold for the last time. And so had Green Bay, because when you look at this financially, had Green Bay just released Rashan Gary, yes, it's a dead cap hit of $17 million, but it also clears $11 million in cap space this year for the Packers. They instead trade him to Dallas. In the financials, from Green Bay's perspective, are nearly identical. It's a $17 million dead cap hit, but you also net or save or clear, whatever phrasing you want to use, $11 million this year. So there are some players, there are some contracts, some situations where releasing is more beneficial than trading, or vice versa. In this case with Rashan Gary, release or trade him, the financial ramifications for Green Bay nearly identical. And with it being abundantly clear to almost everyone that they were not going to bring back Rashan Gary, to get a 4th-round pick, and again, I know it's in 2027, but to get a 4th-round pick out of that, to me, is a magnificent job by this front office. What leverage did the Packers have to get a 4th-rounder? To be a fly on the wall during those conversations between Dallas and Green Bay, I would love to be privy to that information. Unfortunately, I am not. We are not, right? But I would love to know how those conversations went. How did Green Bay pry a 4th-rounder out of this? Dallas could have said, this guy knows he's on his way out. You know he's on his way out. One way or another, whether it's he's released or he's traded to us or he's traded somewhere else, he's going to go. Dallas could have, I would imagine Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys could have said, we'll give you a 6th this year, or we'll give you a 6th in 2027. How did it get to the point of a 4th-rounder? That's what I don't understand. It's a good spot for Green Bay. It was a great solution. Because, again, you release Rashan Gary, it's a $17 million dead cap hit, $11 million in savings. You trade him, it's the exact same. So you're getting the same result financially, and you're netting a 4th-round pick in 2027. I don't understand how the Cowboys couldn't have said, and maybe they tried. I don't know, because it just didn't seem like Brian Gutekunst and the Packers front office had leverage here. It just didn't. Outside of them maybe saying, we do have other teams that are calling and offering stuff for Rashan too, which, you kind of got to read between the leaves on some of that stuff to figure out if it's genuine or not. But I think most people came to the conclusion, Packers fans, people who cover the team, content creators, some of who are in the know, it seemed like everyone was in agreement that, man, if they do trade Rashan Gary, getting anything would be great. And that's not a knock on Rashan Gary. It's more so his contract and how poorly the production dipped in the last 10 games of the season. And so had they traded him to Dallas for a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick or like a 5th and a 7th or something, a 6th and a 7th, most people would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. The overwhelming majority when this trade was announced and the compensation going to Green Bay was verified was they got a 4th-rounder for him. I saw and this is all subjective, but CBS Sports did a ranking of the trade, and it was A- for Green Bay and C+ for Dallas, and it was because the Packers were going to release him anyways. Now they get a 4th-round pick. This makes some sense from Dallas's perspective for a couple of reasons. If we push back the Green Bay angle of this or just push it to the side for a moment, clearly the Cowboys valued Rashan Gary, right? That's clear. They gave up a 2027 4th-rounder for a player whose production is dipping and he has 2 years left on a deal that pays him handsomely, right? And so Dallas valued him. So they get this done now. They don't have to worry about Rashan Gary getting released by the Packers, going through free agency, and who knows, maybe a bidding war starts between a couple of teams. Does it get to the point of what he's set to make this year? I think it's an $18 million base salary, right, for Rashan Gary, and I believe it's like 11 or 12 next year or somewhere around there. I could be wrong on that year, but I think this year, I'm almost positive this year, it's $18 million. And so would a bidding war in free agency have reached that point? No, but Dallas didn't want to deal with that because clearly they valued Rashan Gary. The second layer of this is maybe the Cowboys have an inkling that they can restructure or rework, retool, again, whatever phrase you want to use, the deal that Rashan Gary currently has, which has 2 years left on it. For the Packers, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, right? And that became abundantly clear with his play down the stretch and his cap hit number entering next year, and knowing that, yes, it's $17 million in a dead cap hit, but you net $11 million in savings for this offseason too. Dallas viewed it as worthwhile, and again, maybe they have a clue or two that they can rework or restructure, and I think if they're able to restructure Rashan Gary's deal for the remaining 2 years of this contract, it becomes a better picture for Dallas to try to view it through their prism. Because right now it's just Green Bay was going to release this guy, and they ended up getting a 4th-round pick out of him. And the financial, again, ramifications were the almost the exact same, whether they released the player or traded the player. And so to get a 4th-round pick out of that, when, again, it did not seem like Green Bay had much leverage. I'm just reading one of the write-ups. It's from CBS. Dallas badly needed help on the edge. Gary will provide some of it. The cost to acquire a player who was going to be released was not nothing, and Gary's contract is still pretty sizable. He's probably not worth $39 million over the next 2 years at this stage of his career, even if none of it is guaranteed. And then on the Green Bay side, it says Green Bay was going to cut Gary if it did not find a trade partner for him before the start of the new league year. Getting a 4th-round pick, even a year out, is really nice work. The trade costs the Packers the same amount of dead money and creates the same amount of cap space, which I said, as would a release have done, but they get a draft pick for their troubles. So it makes sense for Dallas because they targeted Gary. You know, they were in on the Max Crosby sweepstakes, swing and a miss. You know, can't blame Jerry Jones and company for that. They were in the running, apparently. Remember, there were reports that Dallas thought they were close to a deal with the Las Vegas Raiders to get Max Crosby. He ends up in Baltimore for 2 first-round picks. Their pivot was to then target Rashan Gary. So they wanted Rashan Gary. They didn't want it to get to free agency, even though it would have cost less, and it wouldn't have cost them a 2027 4th-round pick. They already lost out on Max Crosby. They didn't want to lose out on a player, you know, cut from the cloth of Rashan Gary, in this case, specifically Rashan Gary. So Dallas coughed up the 4th-round pick in 2027 to get it done. But this is, again, a great job, because if the Packers just released Rashan Gary, no one bats an eye. Everyone's like, yeah, it's a cap casualty. The number to bring him back didn't make sense given the production or the lack thereof at the end of the year. So to get this, again, it's like, I feel like 2 off seasons in a row, and I'm not trying to, you know, punch down at Dallas whatsoever, but this feels like the second off season in a row where if you're a Packers fan, you're kind of tipping your cap and thanking Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, because you get the blockbuster deal done a year ago to get Micah Parsons for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. And then you see this offseason, Max Crosby goes for 2 first-round picks. So the compensation, picks-wise, is identical. You know, 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons. The big difference is Micah Parsons' numbers are better than Max Crosby's. Now, he's coming off a torn ACL, but again, at the time you made the trade, you didn't know that this was going to happen, right? But when you trade for Micah Parsons, and we're trying to gain some perspective on what Green Bay gave up last offseason, fast forward to now this offseason, and Crosby goes for 2 first-round picks, but he's, 3-4 years older than Micah Parsons, who's right in the prime of his career, and Parsons putting up better, more consistent, more productive numbers than Max Crosby, and yet the compensation was pretty much even. Of course, the Packers had to also give up Kenny Clark, but in terms of draft picks, the compensation was dead even with what Crosby went for going from the Raiders to the Ravens. And so you check that off as a win for Green Bay, and they got this prized, you know, all-world talent in Micah Parsons that they clearly were salivating for and landed him. And now this offseason, you have a player in Rashan Gary who, again, by all accounts, is set to get released by the Packers. And instead of getting released. He gets traded for a 4th-round pick when everything financially would have lined up the same way had they released him or traded him. So if you're a Packers fan, you're kind of thanking Jerry Jones and the Cowboys for signing up to do business once again. And for Rashan, like, man, you talk about a vocal leader in that locker room, a player who was productive throughout the years, but I can't say he ever lived up to the hype of a 1st-round pick. And he was what? Was he like the 12th or 13th overall pick in his class? Let me look this up, because Rashan was not like a back end of the 1st-round pick, which is still 1st-round pick, but he was 12th overall 2019. 12th overall 2019. Never had a double-digit sack season. Had the torn ACL a couple seasons ago in Detroit. I don't know how much that has plagued him returning from that torn ACL, but man, there were some reps this year especially where he is slow to the punch. He is slow in pursuit. Quarterback's getting outside the pocket. And Rashan, it almost looks like he's jogging, but he's never been a guy who has half-assed his effort at all. Like, he's always, foot on gas. And he just did not have that extra gear, especially down the stretch run of this season. But it's, dating back to when he was drafted in 2019. And I believe that was the same offseason the Packers signed Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. So there was no immediate pressure for Rashan Gary to step in and be the guy. He kind of got to ease his way into things. And once he got that starter's role, it was just inconsistent. It never blossomed into what the Packers envisioned for a player that they took number 12 overall. But Rashan Gary always says the right things. By all accounts, teammates love being around him. He had the C on his chest. He was a captain for the Packers, and he was the one who had the rallying cry when Micah Parsons tore his ACL in Denver, said, we're going to get this done. This defensive front's going to figure it out. And unfortunately, you can't really say they did after the Micah Parsons injury. The numbers as a unit speak for themselves with Parsons and without Parsons, and Gary especially didn't. But he is still a productive player. Like, Dallas isn't trading for nothing. Like, Rashan Gary's a productive player. It's just, it was very evident that his time in Green Bay was coming to an end, probably needed to come to an end. He'll get a fresh start in Dallas and maybe an opportunity to recharge the batteries. You know how they say, a change of scenery can do some of these players good. I hope it does good and bodes well for Rashan Gary. His time in Green Bay was clearly coming to an end, and Green Bay was able to get a 4th-round pick in 2027 instead of just outright releasing him. And so you thank Dallas and you thank the Cowboys, and we're thankful that Jerry Jones exists, right? Because that's the second offseason in a row that you do business with Dallas and you feel pretty good about the outcome for Green Bay. Let me know what you guys and gals think. I'm going to split this up into 2 videos. We'll do another one talking about Sean Ryan, Elton Jenkins, the offensive line, Aaron Banks restructuring, things of that nature. Let me know what you guys and gals think. I'm always appreciative for all the support. It's good to get back on and finally have something to talk about. Please click the subscribe button. It takes 3 seconds to do so. Costs you nothing, but helps me immensely as I build up the channel. We'll see you next time.